Fue un trabajo bastante arduo, pero muy satisfactorio en la medida de que fue un trabajo que ante todo me cambió la perspectiva de la enseñanza de lenguas. Y afortunadamente en el espacio en el que estoy trabajando en este momento, he tenido la posibilidad de aplicar varias de las cosas que tengo acá. Entonces es como, antes que nada, lo que nos propusimos con el profe Luis Alfonso fue proponer una perspectiva diferente en la enseñanza de las lenguas extranjeras. ¿Listo? Esta propuesta está basada en la teoría del discurso que tiene el profe Luis Alfonso Ramírez. Esa es la base teórica de mi trabajo y fue la que apliqué para hacer el análisis de los libros de texto. ¿Listo? So my work is called The Students as Interlocutors in EFL Textbooks, a Polyphonic Discourse Analysis. So here, this is like the first, no, I wouldn't say the problem, but my point of reflection, maybe. And it was what was the role of the textbooks in our EFL context. And I decide two main points. The first one was like the textbooks are not only English, that the point is not only English, but the way of being taught have been spread all over the world, right? So not only the books, not only the material, but we know that with the material we have all the things that we need to use that material. And that means that we are being set how to teach. So it's not only the book, but the way how we need to use the book. And that has an important implication in the classroom, right? Then this role of the textbook means that there is a discursive placement of students and also teachers in the classroom, depending on the textbook. That means we, like discursive actors, we have a specific place in the classroom when we use the textbooks. The next one is the central, the main point of the problem, and is what happens when we don't use the textbook as a help, as a tool in the classroom, but as the guide of the course or the syllabus, right? Because I was working at a university, and in that university, the textbook was everything. So the textbook guide, the syllabus, the program, the evaluation. So what happened when we are totally guided, right, by the textbook? That was like my main point. And also, that means that textbooks are mediators in the EFL classroom, because it's like is the main point between the students and us, right? So it's not only the book as the material, as the tool, but more than that. Okay. According to that, I took some studies. This was my first one. This is a group who studied textbooks in different fields. One is the foreign language teaching, and they mentioned the importance of analyzing or studying and also doing research about textbooks. The first one is that they have a very important role in the teaching and learning processes, because they conform collective identities. So while we are using the textbooks, we are not only teaching the language, we are doing more than that. Maybe we don't realize at the moment, but that really happened. Then they are expressions of interest and conflicts. Why? Because the textbook is set like the topics, the pictures, They are like chosen because of something. It's not only because we need a material. There is like interest behind the textbook and everything that is in the textbook. And also they, I have a problem with this word, synthesize the culture selected for the textbook, and that means everything that is on the textbook is what we are going to give to the students. That's what we are going to give to our students. So it's like seeing the textbook not only as from the linguistic part, but with more elements. So this was according to this, so my interest on textbooks, and also how to see them in a different way, because what happened, there are like many studies about textbooks and also many studies about discourse analysis, but the idea was to see something different, not from the linguistic part, not from the cultural part, but something more. According to this, and according to the polyphonic theory of discourse, my interest was to see the discourse production processes rather than the discourse components in the textbooks, right? It's like not to see the linguistic part, not to see the structure of the textbook, not to talk about coherence of the textbook, but how the discourse of the textbook was built. Then the starting point is the singular act of the discourse production, from which the relationships that the producer establishes with the social group and the knowledge-setting culture are analyzed and studied. This means that the interest was to see the textbook in like the knowledge that they were showing, right? According to some very specific elements that I'm going to show you later. Okay, according to this, there was an objective and a research question. My objective was to explain from the polyphonic theory of discourse how textbooks assume students as interlocutors in their discourse, right? So it's like how students, the idea we could say that is to see how textbooks see students with the activities and the things that the books propose to do. That is like the idea. What kind of a student is the book proposing by their activities and discourse in this case? And my research question was, how are students assumed as interlocutors in some EFL textbooks discourse? Okay, for this, I took as my corpus the Total English textbook. I suppose that you know that book. Total English and Cutting Edge. Why these two books? Because they are the books that I know. So I can say I worked with those books. I know how to work with these books in the classroom. So let's say that I had the whole idea about the textbook, so that's why I decided to work with those two. We can say that there are more books produced by Colombian teachers, maybe, but these were the books that I knew in that moment. So that's why I decided to take them as my corpus. This is my theoretical framework, right? And I choose, or we decided with the teacher Luis Alfonso, to work in the polyphonic theory of discourse in comparison to the sociosemiotic theory by Halliday. Why these two? Because here in the field of discourse analysis, there are like many authors. But what we decide here is that the current approach to teach English, in my case, is based on Halliday's theory. That's why we decided to take this author, because it's like the base at this moment. And this is that the teacher Luis Alfonso had a study about how all the language teaching is based on Halliday's theory. Okay, this was like the most challenging part here. And it was to take like the main categories of the study and the theory also, to understand the main differences between the polyphonic theory of discourse and the sociosemiotic theory in terms of the language, the communication, and discourse, and how these two theories understand the polyphony, because we cannot say that, for example, Halliday doesn't talk about polyphony. He does it, but in a different way, right? So the first point is language, and from the polyphonic theory, is understood as a process, right? While in that part, is a product of the social system. What means that is a process, that discourse is included in the way how we use language, and it includes aspects from culture and society, which are not the same. In Halliday, society and culture are like in the same level. In this case, it's not the same. So the first difference about talking about language between Ramirez and Halliday was here, language is a process, and there is a product. In the second part, we got the communication. In this side, we got is an individualization act, where the discourse producer is socialized by his participation in the different spheres of the world. That means it's like the subject is built at the moment of communicating. In that case, communication is a transference of meanings, where the effective use of the language means or implies a specific linguistic behavior, right? It's like in this part, it was very important to take into consideration that in this part, from this perspective, we are not talking about a model, as could happen in that side. It's like we got this model, and it is possible to apply in different communicative situations. What happened here is like every time you communicate, you act in a different way, and you build a different communicative act. In the last part, we got the category of discourse. Here is understood as a group of voices that converge in a significant voice that assemble all of them according to some specific communicative actions or needs. And then, there in that side, we got text, which means an exchange of meanings in different interpersonal contexts. This means that every time that we communicate, our voice means our knowledge about the world, where our culture, our social background is included at the moment of communicating. In that part means that it's like an exchange of words and significance. According to this, how is polyphony understood? In this part, from the voices means that discourse is polyphonic because not all people have the same knowledge. Not all people know the same. Not all people have the same cultural background, right? That's why at the moment of communication, our ideas are going to be totally different, right? But in that case, polyphony is the different linguistic options that we have at the moment of communication, right? So it's like we got a linguistic system. In that linguistic system, we got many, many different words, which is the polyphony, and we take the words that we need, right? So in this case, it's seen from the knowledge of the discursive factor, and in that side, we are talking about the variety in the linguistic system. Okay. In this case, the Communication Act starts from an assumption that the producer has or built about his/her interlocutor in a specific communicative situation. That means at the moment of communicating something, I'm seeing my interlocutor in a specific way. And according to that, I talk. It's like the basic idea. And the interest was, okay, how textbooks are assuming students to say what they say or to propose what they propose, right? According to the theory, and this is like the categories that I use to apply in the textbook. According to this assumption, in the discourse production, it's possible to see necessity, which could be a necessity of interacting, a necessity of knowing, or a necessity of expressing, right? According to this, there is a predominant relationship between the producer or the interlocutor, the producer or the object of knowledge, which we can say that is the topic that we talk about, or the producer with himself, right? Then there is a variety of discourse. In that part we talk, it's not a type of discourse because it's not according to the structure, it's according to how we assume the person, the kind of communication that we want to establish. So the variety of discourse in the interaction necessity, we got the daily discourse, which is the discourse that we use every single day for single things. In the second, the necessity of knowing, we got techno-scientific discourse. And in the last, there is a necessity of expressing, which is like more related to literature or poetry. In that case, according to the necessity and the others, some knowledge is expressing in a specific way. In the first one, could be by an image, in the second by concepts, and in the third one, by a poetic image. And in the last part, we got how the content of the discourse is related, how we can establish a relationship between in the content according to the necessity. In the first one is done by synecdoche, in the second one by metonymy, and in the third one by metaphor. So, what is this like? What was the idea of seeing this in textbook? To know what was the original necessity that textbooks see to build their discourse in the way they see students. That means they are going to prefer relationship between the producer and the interlocutor. According to that, on the textbooks, it's possible to see a specific variety of discourse. Then they present the knowledge in a specific way, and finally, they establish a specific relationship in the content. I mean, in the way they present the content. The idea was to see what was from here, from these three options, what was present in the textbook and the pedagogical implications, right? Okay, if they are, as an example, I'm going to explain, if the first is the necessity of knowing, what is that? How they see students from that point? What are we really doing with the students according to this, right? Okay. I don't know if, okay. I'm going to show you this part. So my research design was qualitative research. That was like the first part, because my main objective was to explain. There was a specific data analysis and procedure that was priority, because I took the categories from the polyphonic theory of discourse and I wanted to see them on the textbooks. My role, according to what I was doing with the polyphonic theory of discourse, means that I had to interpret what was in the textbooks, right? So in this case, I was not interested in apply something. It was just like a personal interest of knowing about this topic. And finally, my research approach was the polyphonic theory of discourse. I mean, everything what I did was based on this theory, right? Everything. But the cycle was like the same. What happened here? There's not a lot about actually discourse analysis research. It's like a new field according to what I was seeing in this topic. But what I could see at the end of my inquiry was that this type of research is like based on the theory that you choose to do it. That is going to be your methodology. I mean, if you decide to do discourse analysis research from Foucault, for example, your methodological frame is going to be based on Foucault's theory or approach. That is like the idea. There is not like a specific model to work with discourse analysis research. That depends on the theory that you choose to work. In this case, this one. Okay. According to this, there were like 3 different levels according to the polyphonic theory of discourse. That was like 3 main steps that I had to follow to interpret what I wanted to interpret. The first one was the comprehensive level, which is the process of textualization according to the polyphonic theory of discourse. This means that I had to see like the textbooks itself. That's why we got here decontextualized. Not in the classroom, know how we use it, just the textbook itself. Units, topics, pictures, activities, that's it. In the next level, the idea, which is the level of enunciation, the idea was to divide or explicit the voices included in the textbooks, right? That is the second level of the polyphonic theory of discourse, and is to split the piece of discourse that you have, right? So in the first part, I got the textbooks, then I divide some elements. I'm going to show you how I did it. And in the last part, in the process of discursivization, the idea is to give a critical interpretation of what I had before. This part was related with the pedagogical implications of this. It's like to take out the piece of discourse, you put it in like a real context, and you give your point of view for this. So they are the textbooks, you analyze, you divide, and then you say what you see with a from a critical point of view. Okay. So now it's like more the application, right? The corpus of analysis was, as I said before, the Total English and Cutting Edge textbooks, pre-intermediate students book from Pearson Lockman Publishing House. Here I have to clarify, I also date these two books because they are like very famous in our field, right? Pre-intermediate because first there were the books that I knew the most at that moment. And also because I realized that some elements from the textbooks are good at like very useful in the first levels, but not at these levels. So we could say that some elements of the textbooks in an elementary level are good for elementary level, but then we could expect that something is going to be more complex, right? So I wanted to see if in this level there was something more complex, right? Okay, so what I found according to my categories was I always had a problem with that word, teacher. I still have it. Okay. According to my first category, that was the necessity of communication, I discovered that textbooks start from an interactional need of communication. That was like the first point. I mean, textbooks are built to do that students interact, right? In the second, in the discursive variety, they prefer a daily discourse. In the third one, the representation of knowledge, there is a predominance of images, pictures, or photos. In the fourth, in the relation of the content, the synecdoche, according to the theory, is the one that is present there. And in the last one, in the articulation of voices, they are built by narration. All this means that students have to do something specific and that they are seen in a specific way. I mean, with the idea of students only interact implies something in the classroom. But yes, here is like very important to say that I'm not thinking about how to use the book in the classroom. because we know that the textbooks can say something, but we can do something different in the classroom, right? That is like clear, and most of the times we don't follow the plan of the textbook, right? But here the idea is not to think about that. It's just to see what textbooks propose to do, right? How can we see that on textbooks? The necessity of interacting. What is that? That means that textbooks want to cause an effect on the interlocutor. They want that students do things with other people, right? There are roles socially established, and there are generalizations, and also that there is a kind of ritual in what textbooks propose. So I got here some of my examples. First, if you see here the verbs, which are underlined, it's like they are always telling to the students what to do, right? And okay, we are talking about the textbook that a student has in her hands. We are not thinking about the workbook. We are not thinking about the teacher's book, just the book, the student's book, right? So discuss the following questions in pairs or small groups. Write one sentence, only one, about each of the following. Tick the statements you agree with and put across, Complete the paragraph, Okay. The effect is that textbooks want students to do something. That's it. Do things with other people. Okay. In pairs or small groups, right? Couples, with your classmate, right? There are roles socially established. We don't have, I don't have the example here, but we know that textbook says in the restaurant, at the airport, and there is always like giving the position that the student have at the moment of communicating, right? There are also generalizations. What is this? The topics are like very general. Music, culture, what is the other one? Time, right? Yes, like very general, like if, for example, the time is the same all over the world, right? And also, there is like a kind of ritual. Because if you see, textbooks are built in the same way. The unit, the title, the picture, the leading activity, the vocabulary, right? The only different thing is the order. It's like, just imagine if we follow the textbook every single class. Every single class is the same. That means it's like a ritual. We are doing the same all the time. These verbs, for example, discuss, write, tick, are good for I said before, a first level. Because at that stage, we can say that the students need to be guided, right? We need to help them more. But in a pre-intermediate level, so we hope that the students act by themselves. Because it is supposed, according to the European Common Framework, that speakers have to be independent. That's what the Common European Framework said. They are independent users. But in this case, we said, okay, independent, but they are told what to do all the time at this level, which is a level when I can say, okay, my student can speak. That's it. Then, in the second category I took here the main ideas of the categories. The first one, in this case, in the second one, I saw that, I said before, there is a daily discourse variety. This means that the discourse producer is not seen. The discourse is submitted to the interlocutor. And finally, the producer supposes the interlocutor wants what the interlocutor wants, needs, likes, or prefers. There is a need of topics, specific topics. So, why we can say that the discourse producer is not seen? If you see a textbook like this one, for example, you never see the author's opinion, for example. There are only contents. But the author never said, okay, in my opinion, so a student, say something about what I'm saying. That never happened. The discourse is submitted to the interlocutor because the main point is that the student manage the language. The book needs students speak. It's like a kind of good in a first stage, but what happened, for example, with analysis or critical thinking or opinions or discussions? No, the idea is that students speak. So they consider that speaking English is only to manage the linguistic code. The producer supposes what the interlocutor wants, needs, likes, or prefers. That's why, in this example, how often do you watch television? And if you see, it's like very common here, they are always saying, what is your favorite TV program? What is your favorite singer? What do you do on weekends? Because it's like a way of including the other. I mean, if I'm talking about you all the time, you feel that you are included in my discourse, right? Because you are talking about the things you like, you don't like, you prefer, and so on. In the next, knowledge represented by images. In this case, especially pictures. What happened with this? I mean, what really happened when we decide to use a picture to represent something? There is like direct conceptualization of the thing. And what happened here? And there is a concrete relationship with the real world. You don't need to go further. Time, a watch. That's it. It's like the, how can I say that? It's like the most closer idea that we got. So what happened on textbooks? An example. There is the title of the unit, the topic, and the image. That always happens. And it's also a generalization. I took these examples. The unit and the topic of the unit was 24 hours, and the image was a clock. Music, a saxophone could be a different musical instrument, right? Taste, in this case pepper, but could be any kind of food. Survival, climbing. I mean, the meaning or the concept that is given at the moment is very specific. It's like you don't need to discuss that. Time is that, and that's it, right? that is like as it is very concrete, very, very concrete, you don't need to think a lot. It's very difficult that if I clock and say the time is here, someone is going to say no. It's like, could happen, but it could be like a bit difficult. So in this case, what happened with the use of pictures is the possibility of analysis is very, very low, right? In the fourth, a relation of the content by synecdoche. The signification process is done in a concrete and immediate sense. That means, again, that there is a very, very low possibility for students to analyze or to discuss. The idea is to build a closer and immediate relationship with the interlocutors. What happened here? The idea is they talk. It doesn't matter a lot about what. It doesn't matter a lot what they are really saying. The interest is they use the language in a correct way. Because according to the frame, there is a correct way of using the language, right? There are also generalizations and basic interpretation processes, because in a daily discourse and also with a concrete knowledge, is very difficult to discuss. I can say at this moment is 3:20. Who is going to say no? That is the time, right? The idea is to talk. The idea is to manage the language, but opinions are not really important, right? So we got here some examples, and also because the point here, if you see, I'm not going to explain this a lot, but if you see all the things that are like treated in the textbooks are on the textbooks, right? It's like encrypted. And sometimes they try to go, okay, this is the city, and talk about your city. But they are like encrypted topics. The possibility of analysis and discussion is not very simple from here. I tried to do it, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult because we are talking about musical instruments. But what kind of discussion can we have about that? Right? It's like we don't need to argue about that topic. Your favorite food. My favorite food is pasta. Okay, how can I discuss that point? It's pasta. Okay, good. I can do anything, right? It's like the topics don't give the possibility of discussion. And finally, there is a narrative articulation of voices. This means how this point is important, because in this last part is to see how students can really express themselves according to these activities. Because remember, from the activities, we are saying the student, do this with the language, right? The point is, I can include you in my discourse, but that not means that you are giving your opinion. It's not only to include you, it's how I include my interlocutor, what I really want to do with my interlocutor. That's why this point is very interesting, because we can say what is the real, how can I explain that? what is the real way or point in which students are being built as discursive actors. To what extent they can express their opinions. Because if we see, we can say, okay, yes, the student is included, of course. Because what's your favorite food, what's your favorite music, we can say the whole discourse is centered on the students. But how? Is their knowledge really included? Is their cultural background really included in this point? So, according to this, at the end, we can see that the view of the producer is far or overshadowing. That means it's not important, it's not really important what you are saying, but the way how you are using language. Okay, how was your experience at the primary school? I don't want to know about the learning process of the students. I want, in this case, the textbooks want the student use past simple. Right? So the interest is different. I include you from an experience, but my interest is you to use past simple. And that's different. That's why the voice in terms of knowledge and culture is not real use at the moment of communication. The next, the voices or knowledge included in the textbooks are only a set of topics which are considered to be well known for all the people. And that's why it's also very difficult to analyze or to discuss, right? And the idea is students talk about something. So we can say what is the real content of the textbook. Because the topics are only like, not pretext, what is the word? I forgot. I forgot the word. It's like, pretexto, I forgot the word. It's very simple, but pretext? Okay. For students to talk, right? It's not the content is not real, it's not really important. What is really important is to have a topic to talk about something, right? And most of the times, they are topics which are not well known for all people. I mean, about the weather. Every single person has something to say about weather. But in more complex topics, maybe not all of us can say something. That means that we, for example, we needed to check some information, we needed to read something, we need to analyze something to give an opinion about that topic. But not in this case. Every single person has something to say about food, for example. So, as it's very simple, we don't need to go further, right? It is possible to try to make these topics more complex, but not from the textbook itself, right? That means, what is the relationship between, in discursive terms, what are the different relationships built from the textbook with the students? The relation between producer. I mean, how is the producer inside the textbook discourse? Is a set of rules, right? Because why does that is set by rules? Because we need to know that the books, because of the publishing houses, they need to have a specific structure and everything. So the interest is to give very specific points for the students to do something, right? What happened between the producer and the interlocutor. The producer, I mean the author of the textbook, wants to include the interlocutor, but I already said how, include him. And in the last part, the producer and the referent. What happened? The referent, we can say that is the topic. There is an inclusion of the other voices, but in a very basic way. And finally, there is a necessity of having a referent to start. So we need a topic to talk about something, a topic specifically to use the language. That is like the main interest. This is, okay. I want to see this point because what are the implications of this in the classroom? What really happened with, I'm not thinking about the use of the textbook inside a classroom, but only from the textbook, what could happen? Who is the student from the textbook? The question is not how the student uses the language, but who is the student, right? Because we also know that these textbooks are like standardized, right? So they think that all students are the same. That's why all of them can give an opinion about the topics, right? So it's like, who is the student from the textbook? What kind of person is the textbook seeing from this type of discourse? The first is like students are assumed as users of the language because language is a product. The interest is the linguistic code, and why there is a big difference between a user and a speaker, because a user is the person that I want to use the language, to speak the language, right? But the speaker or the discursive actor is not only to use the language, but what is he or she saying about the word by the language. There is interaction in terms of the correctness in the use of the language. This means a technical use. Correctness means that according to a specific frame, I have to use specific linguistic structures, like, what did you do last weekend? Past simple. So it's like an idea, and our students, that happen at least with my students. If you say a story, they think about past simple. Not what happened in the story. How can I use the verb? ED, irregular, right? The inclusion of the interlocutor does not mean the inclusion of his voice in terms of knowledge, experiences, and discourse. Because again, it's not what he or she is saying, it's how he or she is using the language. The interlocutor, in this case our students, are hidden. He is a user, but not a discursive actor, because textbooks are not proposing like doing, how can I say that, like thinking processes, analysis, critique, right, discussion, not only to repeat some things that are framed. And at this level of these textbooks, we could expect that something different happened, right? Students are assumed as passive factors, although the main interest of textbooks is to include them. is like very weird, because the point of interest of textbooks is to include students. But at the end, what happens is their voice is not important. What is important is the language. They have to learn the language. Students are, as interlocutors, should answer to the objectives and frames of the textbooks. This happened in the institution that I worked. And what is the real interest? Most of the times, in this case, in that institution, was that to accomplish the objectives of the program or the book or the institution, but not what students are really doing, right? From the use of the language in a set situation, let's think about a role play. Let's think about speaking. Student A, okay, and student doesn't have name. Student A, student B, right? You are A, you are B. In that happen, maybe in those situations, what could happen is they are reproducing some things of an unequal social order, and this is related to critical pedagogy, right? What we don't know, but maybe we are reproducing this inequality by this. You are the waiter, you are the customer, right? Maybe not in a conscious way, but this happened. Why? Because we are not analyzing why the learner has to be always the waiter in some situations. No, you are the waiter because the instruction says that you are the waiter, and then you change, right? Students are assumed as passive individuals because, not only because of the kind of knowledge they can include, but also in the social action. There is not necessity of changing anything. Why I need to discuss about the picture of the watch if it's there? Yes, I don't need to change anything. It's like everything is done, I just need to follow. That's it. In this case, students are not placed as part of the reality, but as neutral observers. It's like the reality is not related to them. They are not part of that because they are thinking on how to use the language. And most of the times that happens with our students, right? It's like, okay, what is that topic? What are you going to do on the weekend, right? Yes. Or summertime. I'm going to eat a hamburger. Yes. But we are talking about your vacations, right? And they say, teacher, but I'm going to. That's right. Yes. But it's not possible that on your vacations you are only to eat a hamburger, right? That's like the point. So reality is not part of them. The structure is the main part, right? They are standardized users of the language with a limited discourse production depending on a specific frame. What happened here? What happened, and in this case, we are talking about the pedagogical implications, and in this case, we need to see our students without the textbook. And what happened with my students? Okay, this is the role play A and B. Excellent. But when you have your student in a, okay, give me your opinion, it's very difficult for them to do it during a speaking, right? It's very difficult because they don't have the frame. they don't have the instruction. And it's very weird to see how a very good student in the class, when you don't have the frame, they don't know what to do with the language. They don't know what to do because they don't have the frame. So that means that the textbook is giving some elements, but also they are limiting like other things, other like thinking processes. The lack of an argumentative discourse in this textbook do not place the students as interlocutors and participants of the reality outside of the classroom, which most of the times is problematic and dynamic. So they see, there is a point where they, when they see the reality as in the book, but nothing happened outside. That's why when we want an opinion, they don't know how to do it. Because language is not related with a movement, right? It's like a static. The students' voices are reduced to the minimum because they are not necessary to develop the activities proposed in the textbook. It's not necessary to discuss. It's necessary to use the language. It's like repetitive, it's the same, right? We don't need that. We need to use the past simple or that kind of things, but we don't need to discuss. And also because most of the times they don't know how to do it. If we plan debate on the classroom, that could be like a total disaster because they don't know how to really express using the foreign language. And also here, I include the teacher because we are part of that, because we are who really know the textbooks, right? So it is supposed that we know how to use them. The student in that case is only receiving some things, but we have the responsibility of using the textbook in the classroom. What happened with us as teachers? When I have everything done to do my class, that means I'm also being limited in my class because I'm being said what to do and how to do my class. That's why teachers are also important here. The teacher is more worried about the objectives he has to accomplish than in the dialogue with the students. The resignification of discourses and realities. Are we really like building something with our students, or we are only help them to speak English? It's like the point is to think, how can I do both things at the same time? They speak English, but they also do something more. That's like the point. How can I go further with this? Not only speak English, but also something more. Because the point I've seen in the program where I work, which is for students to be English teachers, is when they are in a high level of English, they think that they don't have anything else to learn. I speak English, teacher. Okay, but what else? So they think that they are in class wasting their time because they think they know everything because they have a good level of English. And that's it. That's enough for them, right? So we can say, okay, but what else can you give? What else can you do? Teacher, but this is an English class and I speak English. What's the problem? What else? What else? What can you do with that? That is the problem with this. The kind of speakers that this type of discourses are building. Finally, I said this before, there are not many important points of the reality that are included in the classroom, because reality is seen like very simple, like very clear for all of us, like very, so one could expect that the topics included in the classroom and are not the same topics that I use to speak with someone on the bus. That is like the point. So what one could expect that something different happening in that part. And finally here, because it is necessary to think about this, how this study could be like go further, right? Because this is like the first study done in this way. Studies about textbooks are a lot. So I would say that it would be interesting a study about the use of textbooks inside the EFL classroom. So to like move this from the book to the real context, to see how teachers and students place themselves as discursive actors by using the textbook. Because maybe we are also hidden teachers, and we are doing that with ourselves, right? So in that case, if we think about the classroom, in my opinion, we should see students and teachers, because the teacher is also part of the classroom. I consider important to know the students and teachers' perceptions about the role of the textbooks in the EFL learning and teaching processes. Because sometimes we think that, okay, they help. We cannot say that books are not useful. That's not the point. But how we use the book. And because we cannot think that students assume books are good because they are books, right? What do we think about that? What is our opinion about that? Because some teachers can say, I love that because I don't have to prepare my class. I have everything. Okay. And the students can say, okay, it's good because I only have to fill the gap. That's it. So what is to see this like in the real learning and teaching processes from this perspective? It's like how is the discourse built inside the classroom from this material seen from this approach. That is like the point. I remember Harold Castañeda, one of my jurors, he said, okay, but I think that maybe this is like a very subjective project, because you are seeing only one author, it's only about you, and I said, yes. It's because what I'm thinking here is what I'm doing as teacher in the classroom. That was my interest. If it's subjective, yes, because I was really interested in understanding my role in a different way, right? It's like how teachers think our role, right? This is, as you see here, there is not any implementation, it's only a theoretical study, right? It's just theory, it's just analysis, but I can say that it has been very positive. I'm trying to implementing some things is not very easy, because also we have to change our chip, but there are some things that are possible with our students, and that's it. I don't know if you got any questions.